Let's jump over to the first story. The story about prosecutors. This is from WTOP News. This is a local DC. Prosecutors weigh heavy hammer, felony murder for rioters in Capitol officer's death. They say as federal prosecutors file charges against rioters who took part in last Wednesday's violent takeover of the U.S. Capitol, investigators continue to gather evidence in the death of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who died from injuries sustained during the attack. While most murder investigations focus on the person or persons who caused the fatal injury, former federal prosecutor Tim Heaphy said prosecutors could charge many rioters with felony murder even if they were nowhere near Sicknick. Heaphy led the months-long investigation into law enforcement performance before, during, and after the deadly 2017 rally in Charlottesville. Heaphy was in the U.S. Attorney for Western District of Virginia from December 2009 through January 2015, appointed by Obama. Under the doctrine of felony murder, which applies in the District of Columbia, any murder that occurs during the commission of one of several underlying felonies is chargeable as felony murder, saying, quote, "The classic example is if three guys go to rob a convenience store and one guy is the getaway driver. If in the commission of the robbery, the clerk was shot and killed, all three of the participants in the robbery of the store are potentially guilty of felony murder." On January 6th, as most of you know, there was a raucous event at the Capitol. Some call it an insurrection, some call it a riot, some call it storming. They say in the federal murder code, 11 underlying felonies, which can be part of a felony murder charge, are listed. One which could be applicable to the January 6th takeover is burglary. Quote, "You could look at the storming of the doors of the Capitol by that riotous mob as burglary. If they went in with the intent to steal, disrupt proceedings, to commit other offenses, they committed burglary. And therefore, a murder that occurred during the course of a burglary could be potentially charged as felony murder. The mere act of breaking into the Capitol doesn't constitute burglary. Prosecutors would need to prove that they intended to do something criminal once they were inside. Let's say somebody storms the Capitol with the intent to disrupt Congress or steal the sign outside of Speaker Pelosi's door, and there's a murder that occurs in the midst of that. He could be charged with felony murder. As with any crime, federal or state, prosecutors have to weigh whether charges can be sustained in court. They say in this case, with crimes committed on federal property and in the death of a federal employee, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, which prosecutes cases in both federal and local courts, would have the felony murder count at its disposal. So I'll say this. It wasn't just the officer who died. It was Ashley Babbitt. I think if they go this route, and they could, I'm not entirely sure they will. They could actually charge these people, maybe even every single person who went in the building, with the death of Ashley Babbitt because a death occurred in the commission of a crime. There's a lot of things that are crazy about this. There have been photos popping up of random people who are like, well, I mean, most people, I guess, were kind of random in a sense, but some people who weren't even in the building, people are doxing them and saying they were there. That's enough. That's all that matters. Some people who weren't in the building at all. And in the case of the New York Times, we just mentioned this, Richie McGinnis, who's been on the show several times, who's a journalist. He's actually the journalist who tried to save the life of the man who was shot in Kenosha, Wisconsin earlier this year. He's up against a window pointing down, and the New York Times ran a caption saying that he was a rioter who punched the glass when they wouldn't let him in, which is just not true. He dropped his phone and he was trying to ask someone to pick it up for him. So this is where things get weird. If they actually, I guess the question is, are they going to go after all of the Trump supporters with an iron fist? When you look at Black Lives Matter and how the district attorneys were releasing these people and not charging them, there's a question of whether or not they're going to be biased against conservatives and just run them over the coals, throw the book at them, or are they going to be worried about, potentially setting off some kind of political spark by going for Trump supporters in this way?
I think a couple of things. One, this whole felony murder thing is an overreach in the worst way, because when you talk about 3 or 4 people robbing a convenience store, it's all coordinated. It's all planned. They are in cahoots with each other. All the people that stormed the Capitol, they didn't know each other. Were they all on Parler and saying, "Hey, we're going to do this particular thing"? They didn't even know it. These people didn't even know each other. So you can't say that, or the person that shot David Dorn. Do you go, well, everybody who was committed, who was part of the riot is complicit? You can't say that.
That's the question of bias.
All right. Well, here's
they wouldn't do that for the riots with Black Lives Matter. Would they do it here?
Well, that's different. It's a different story too, because you're talking about district attorneys on a local level, on a state level. Now, since this happened on federal property, you're talking about the DOJ and the incoming DOJ. So you're probably not going to see. It's all this talk about charges, but you're not going to see anything really come about until after Biden is inaugurated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Unless Trump comes out and just sweeping pardons everybody.
I actually made a joke on my Twitter about that.
You think it's going to happen?
No, it won't. But
yeah, because Trump doesn't have any.
But it could be. But that would be kind of a bold move, wouldn't you say?
Well, another thing to really kind of understand here, I remember seeing someone post and saying, well, it's good to see that the FBI could be effective when they want to be. And we have to admit, the FBI has been pulling out all the stops. There's videos of them of showing up at people's homes, stopping people at airports. They're putting up signs on bus stops. So they're doing everything in their power and utilizing all of their power in an extensive way, which seems like they're activated in a way that they weren't before. And if we're going to look at responsibility, I mean, there's already some investigations going around the Capitol Police. There's some officers suspended. But wasn't there 6 requests that were denied for extra police assistance by the mayor's office?
No, not by the mayor's office.
Who's this?
It was by Capitol Police.
By the Capitol Police.
Six times they got denied. The mayor, this is really interesting. Muriel Bowser was, according to the New York Times, concerned about having an excessive police presence following a summer of riots and the criticism of over-policing. She was like, I don't want it. We want limited, National Guard just guiding traffic and some police. And so she said a narrow, unarmed mission. That's crazy. 6 times they asked. They said, we need more police for this. And they're like, nah.
Well, see, that's the thing when you read Twitter and everybody goes, didn't you see this coming? We saw this coming. We all saw it coming. You're like, well, the mayor didn't. The black mayor of Washington, D.C. didn't. Well, so if she didn't, then...
Well, she put out a statement on the 5th saying, I'll make it clear I am not requesting a strong police presence here. It's the aftermath of saying defund the police, man. The politicians get scared. And they're like, all right, let's hold back because we don't want, think about it. After painting Black Lives Matter in the street, renaming the plaza, and then saying, I want a battalion of jackboots marching through the streets, locking everything down, she would get roasted by the left. So she's like, nope. And now she's going to get roasted by the left no matter what.
But she was already being roasted by the left when she went out of her way. She made sure that the street said Black Lives Matter. There was another argument because they wanted more. She didn't want to give it to them. But we have to understand.
Somebody put defund the police next to it. Yeah, and then they washed it off.
Yeah, and then some people were being charged with hate crimes for putting out similar messages, but in a different kind of political understanding. But another thing to really really think here along the lines of everything that's unfolding, we have to understand this is extremely political. When we have someone in a prosecutor's office, when we have someone appointed as attorney general, and we have George Soros giving them millions of dollars, there's a reason he's investing so much money, because you not only get political favors, but you're able to kind of sweep the landscape of our society in ways that laws can't. Because when you choose how to enforce laws, and this is the selective enforcement of it to the highest degree, when you see it done this way, it is awe-stunning to see what they could get away with.
It's funny. Shoe on Head posted his tweet where she was like, it's a screenshot of Parler being removed, and she said, Rioters, this is what Bezos has taken from you. Let's redistribute his wealth as revenge or whatever. And I just thought it was really funny, and I'm like, I'm okay with this. Look, I'm not really okay with the idea of seizing the wealth of everybody and just spreading it around. There's a problem with corporate power and government power when it exceeds certain levels. But when you have someone like Bezos who has so much money, and Mackenzie Bezos specifically putting billions of dollars into left-wing political causes, it's creating instability. So there's certainly something to complain about there. But I think it's funny you bring up, the influence people get when they buy politicians, which they basically do. And there's really I don't know if there's a way we actually stop that process. But there is, I think, a left and the right, left and the right could come together on this and be like, yo, these people are subverting our institutions, and that's a problem.
Well, you'll also, speaking of Parler, you'll also never guess. The Washington Post put out, the editorial board put out an opinion piece about Parler. You'll never guess what their opinion was.
It's a good thing it was banned.
It was a good thing. Yeah, it was a good thing. Our boss did the right thing. Basically.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
right.
We're seeing
because Amazon, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post.
Dies in darkness.
Well, we're seeing a lot of flip-flopping. Let's be honest here. We're seeing a lot of people flip from their original ideas of defunding to police to now the police are great. And and there's even some individuals arguing that Ashley Babbitt deserved it.
That's the left. Those people are sick.
Yes, and when you're making arguments like that after having months of protest against the police, and now you're supporting the police, you really have to start asking yourself what's going on here. And these flip-flops happen not just within the left, they happen within the right in some instances. But right now we are seeing this kind of shifting of basic kind of virtues overnight because of political power, because of wanting your side to win, because of gang affiliation, which is more important than the truth to many people.
Let me say something. George Floyd should not have died. Breonna Taylor should not have died. Ashley Babbitt should not have died. It is a tragedy when any person loses their life. You know, I was saying it earlier. I don't care if you committed a crime. You know, I don't want you to die. I understand there are circumstances where someone could be violent and dangerous, and only in the process of trying to preserve life do we end someone else's life. It's self-defense. That's why we allow that as a defense in court or as a reason not to prosecute somebody. But to see Antifa say that a person who was shot, an unarmed person shot by a cop, deserved it. Wow. Talk about the utmost hypocrisy. Now listen, when I saw those conservatives throwing the Blue Lives Matter on the ground and then stomping on it, that to me looked more like anger and kind of a realization as to what they were experiencing. And it was for a lot of the conservatives who are, you know, being basically shut down by these cops, they've never had this happen before because conservatives don't protest for the most part. So to them, it was kind of like this new experience where they were like, dude, are you kidding me? This is ridiculous what they're doing. So they stomped on that flag. That's not hypocrisy. That's a change of opinion. To an extent, I can respect Antifa changing their opinion if their opinion was consistent. They're saying an unarmed woman who was shot by a cop deserved it. Okay. All right. So
but the guy with the taser shooting at cops, that's, you know, shouldn't have happened.
They're saying that the fascist U.S. government killing an unarmed woman is justified.
Yep.
Antifa defending what they claim to be fascists.
Well,
I love it.
We're going into a very scary time where policies no longer matter and only power matters. And when you go towards this particular instant of where we're at right now, we're going to see people leveraging that power and trying to use that power to try to hurt their political opposition. And I think that's where we are right now, with people trying to take advantage and escalating threats and fear-mongering about them to really rattle their base to support this kind of emergency takeover of civil liberties, because that's historically what always happens.
You know, regarding Ashley Babbitt, I don't support... I'm not glad she's dead, but she was climbing through a window into a sensitive area of the Capitol building with a few armed guards that were terrified for their lives and probably charged to protect things and people in there.
Did you see the video footage?
She had a backpack on, so she could have had a bomb in that, and that's probably what went through their mind when they saw her.
I think they had.
What are you gonna? You're supposed to defend the Capitol.
He couldn't see her. No, it's right.
She stuck her head up.
There's police officers behind her.
I know.
There's cops, but listen, I'll say this: I don't think that officer should be criminally charged. It's his job to defend the Capitol. Yeah. He's got politicians inside, and people were breaking the glass and trying to break in, and she pops up and he fired. We can have a discussion about administrative procedure due to the fact that he fired on a person. Maybe he fired too soon. Maybe he should have waited. Maybe it was the right thing. We can have the discussion. Okay. No criminal charges, in my opinion, because you break your way into the Capitol. She may have been part of the group that they opened the door for. We have no idea. Maybe she was part of the group that shoved their way in. But you have an unarmed person and a bunch of bewildered and doting people who, many of whom didn't know what was going on, like that old grandma lady waving the little flag. Come on, she clearly had no idea what was happening. And so for this woman to get shot, it's tragic. I wish it didn't happen. I don't blame the cop.
We saw criminal charges for less for officers before, which is also important to bring up. And I mean, there should be an entire investigation into what happened, and there should be a jury deciding what should happen from here. But I don't think you're right, Ian. That's just my opinion.
I mean, remember again, this is so different because it's on a federal level.
Yeah.
These people are not elected. These, the attorney general is not elected. Unlike, say, Keith Ellison in Minnesota, he was elected. The woman from St. Louis with the McCluskeys, right? Yeah. Elected. And again, George Soros stuff. So that's it's an entirely different scenario, and it's in a way it's scarier on the state level, because at least on the federal level there's well, there should be less bias, but it depends on who you pick.
It's why this private police conversation is freaking me out. We have a lot of people in here that are like ANCAP to the extreme, where it's like no public service. We want private police only. Like a private policeman can shoot you dead.
It depends. I mean, if you make the argument for Detroit implemented private police and they had positive results because of that, you really get into a big argument here that is kind of taken away from the kind of conversation, because there's still just so many other things that we could delve into. But I understand both sides of the argument here.
We do have some breaking news, though. Trump has declared a state of emergency in D.C. ahead of Biden's inauguration. It's quite a simple story. It's really just Donald Trump approved it. They said they want to declare a state of emergency in D.C. There's threats against the inauguration. Trump says yes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 9 days or so. But they're saying armed protests at capitals, armed protests in D.C., who knows what. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.